Caleb's eyes drifted across the compound and landed on her. For a moment, the whole world went quiet. Fiona watched it happen in real time. The exact moment his eyes found her face, something flashed behind them, something cold. Something that looked almost like panic before he buried it so fast she might have missed it if she hadn't spent years studying that face. His smile didn't disappear. He was too practiced for that, but it flickered just barely before anyone noticed. His jaw tightened. His grip on the woman beside him tightened almost immediately, and then he looked away, deliberately and completely. He turned back to the staff member approaching them and resumed his conversation as though the woman standing 30 meters away with a mop and 10 years of destruction behind her eyes was simply part of the scenery. As though she was a fence post or an object, anything but a human being he had once held and promised and abandoned. Fiona's chest felt like something inside it had just quietly collapsed. Adele was still looking up at her. "Mummy, I'm fine," Fiona said. The words came from somewhere automatic. "Pack our things, we're leaving." She turned her back to the entrance and focused on her hands because her hands were the only things she could trust right now. Pack the bucket, fold the cloth, pick up the bottles. She moved with the efficiency of a woman who had learned to function through unbearable things. But across the compound, the woman in the red dress had noticed something. Now this was not just any woman on Caleb's arm. This was Haley Donovan, 33 years old, the only daughter of Richard Donovan, founder and chairman of the Donovan Property Group, one of the most established corporations in the region. Haley had taken over as CEO 2 years ago and had spent every day since proving she had earned it. This event, this entire welcome celebration, was being held in her honor because it was her company, her building, her staff. She had not arrived as someone's guest. She had arrived as the woman in charge. The man on her arm was Caleb, her fiancé of 6 months, the engineer she had fallen in love with, the man who had told her he had no family, no complicated past, nothing and no one before her. She had believed him. Completely. Now as she smiled and shook hands and accepted the warm welcome of her staff, her eyes moved across the compound. They found the woman with the mop and the 2 children, and immediately something snagged her attention. Not the woman's clothes, not her work. It was the stillness. The frozen quality of someone whose body has received a shock too large to process. And then Haley's eyes moved to Caleb, and she saw it, the deliberate way he was not looking in that direction. Not once, not even accidentally. The effort of his not looking was so visible to her that she felt something cool move through her chest. She said nothing. She smiled and took his arm and let the afternoon continue, but she did not forget. That evening after the dinner and the toasts and the laughter had finally settled, Haley sat at her dressing mirror removing her earrings and watched Caleb's reflection as he moved around the room loosening his tie. "The woman by the side of the building today," she said. "The one with the 2 children cleaning up." Caleb's hands paused on his tie. Half a second, then continued. "What about her? You knew her." He looked at her in the mirror and produced a relaxed smile she had come to recognize as his armor. "Haley, I wasn't paying attention to the cleaning staff. There were 100 people there today." "Wasn't paying attention to 100 people," Haley said quietly. "She was paying attention to you. The moment you stepped out of that car, her whole body changed. I saw it." "People stare," he said with a small shrug. "I don't know her." Crossed the room and kissed the top of her head. "It was a long day. Don't do this to yourself." Looked at his reflection for 3 seconds longer than was comfortable. Then she smiled and said nothing more. She did not sleep that night. She lay in the dark and replayed the afternoon in her mind. The woman's frozen stillness, Caleb's careful not looking, the way he had answered just a little too smoothly. She replayed it until she was certain she was not imagining it. Then she made a decision. The next morning while Caleb was in meetings, Haley walked into her own HR office and asked pleasantly and firmly for the contact details of the cleaning company from yesterday's event and the direct number of the specific cleaner assigned to the main hall. The HR manager hesitated for exactly 1 second before he brought out the number. Fiona was folding laundry that evening when her phone rang. She answered it cautiously. The voice on the other end was calm and polite. "Hello, is this Fiona?" "Yes, who is this?" A pause. Then, "Yesterday at the event where you were cleaning, you saw me step out of the car. I was the one holding his hand. You were staring at him, and I believe you know exactly who I mean." The laundry fell from Fiona's hands. She sat down on the edge of the bed so slowly. Her heart was loud and irregular inside her chest. Across the room, Eli looked up from his homework and she turned away from him and pressed the phone against her ear with both hands. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "The truth," Haley said. "That is all. I am not calling to cause you any trouble. I just need to understand something that only you can help me understand." "Will you meet me?" Fiona sat outside her building the next afternoon for 15 full minutes telling herself to turn back. She had survived 10 years by keeping her wounds sealed and her head down and her business to herself. Whatever this was, meant tearing everything back open. Then she thought about Caleb's eyes finding her across that compound and moving away like she was nothing. She stood up and kept walking. Haley was already at the cafe when Fiona arrived. She stood the moment Fiona walked in, the way a person stands when they want someone to know they are being received with dignity. They sat across from each other, and neither rushed the silence. "How do you know Caleb?" Haley asked, and the sealed thing inside Fiona cracked completely open. She had not planned to cry. She had burned through every tear about Caleb years ago in the dark of small rooms while her children slept beside her. But sitting across from this woman who was wearing the ring and living the future that had been built on the ruins of Fiona's youth, something that had been compressed for 10 years, had nowhere left to go. She pressed her hand over her mouth, breathed, and then she told Haley everything. She told her about being 17 and certain she was loved, about the pregnancy, the one-window apartment with the bathroom door that never fully closed, about selling provisions on her head while breastfeeding, about scrubbing floors with Eli on her back, about being 8 months pregnant and still working because Caleb needed money for school. She told her about the second pregnancy. She told her about the night of the letter, his hands on her face, his promises, his tears, and the celebration. She told her how she woke up to find him missing, about having Adele alone in a public hospital, holding a stranger's hand. By the time Fiona finished, Haley's eyes were wet and her hands were pressed flat on the table. She sat with it all for a long, quiet moment, then she reached across the table and took both of Fiona's hands firmly in hers. "He told me he had nobody," she said. "No children, no past. He said he had always been completely alone." She shook her head. "I had no idea, not one idea. I want you to know that." "I know," Fiona said quietly. "I could see it on your face yesterday." Was quiet for another moment. Something was moving behind her eyes, not just hurt, but the devastation of realizing the foundation of everything you trusted was never solid. Then she looked at Fiona and said, "I need you to do something for me. I need you to bring your children and come to my house tonight." Stared at her. "What?" "He needs to see this," Haley said quietly, with his own eyes, in his own space. She held Fiona's gaze. "Will you come?" Fiona did not answer immediately. Every sensible part of her said no. Said go home. Said you have protected yourself this long, do not walk into that house and break open in front of him again. But a quieter part, older and more tired and done with being erased, said yes. She came. Haley had timed it carefully. She brought Fiona and the children in through the front door while Caleb was still upstairs. She settled them in the living room, Fiona on the couch, Eli beside her. Adele pressed close to her mother's side, looking around the large, beautiful house with wide, curious eyes. Haley brought them water. She sat across from them. She was calm. They heard his footsteps on the stairs before they saw him. Caleb walked into the living room, still looking down at his phone, mid-sentence about something, completely unprepared, stopped. The phone dropped to his side. Every drop of color left his face so fast it was like watching a light switch off. He stood completely frozen in the doorway of his own living room, staring at Fiona sitting on his couch with his 2 children beside her, and for 3 full seconds nobody said anything at all. Then he found his voice. "What is this?" he said. He looked at Haley. "What is she doing here?" "Sit down, Caleb," Haley said. "Haley?" He moved toward her immediately, reaching for her arm, trying to angle her away from the couch, away from Fiona, away from the children. His voice dropped low and urgent. "Listen to me. Whatever she told you, you don't know this woman. She is lying. She has been lying." "Do not touch me right now," Haley said. Her voice was so harsh and commanding that his hand dropped. "This is insane," he said, turning back to Fiona now, his voice becoming harder. "You came to my house. You don't know these children are mine. You can't just come here and—" "Caleb," Fiona said. Her voice was calm in a way that surprised even her. "Just stop," she said. "Will not stop," he said, his voice rising now, the composure cracking at the edges. "You have shown up in my home making accusations, and I am not going to stand here and—" "Look at him," Haley said. "What?" "Look." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Look at the boy." Turned. Eli was sitting quietly on the couch the way he always sat. He looked at Caleb the way he would look at any stranger, briefly, politely, without recognition, and then looked away again, and Haley watched Caleb's face while he looked at his son. Then she looked at Eli herself. The jaw. The eyes. The slight tilt of the head. The exact way he held his shoulders. She had looked at Caleb's face for 2 years, and she was now looking at a 12-year-old boy who was wearing that same face so completely and so honestly that her chest physically ached. She looked back at Caleb. He had gone very still. "Tell me he is not yours," Haley said softly. "Look at that boy and tell me." The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Caleb opened his mouth. Something moved across his face, the last desperate scramble of a man watching every exit close simultaneously. Then his shoulders dropped. The fight went out of him so completely that he looked for a moment like a much smaller man than the one who had walked into the room 30 seconds ago. He said nothing, and his silence said everything. "Get out," Haley said. "Haley, please." "Everything in this house belongs to me," she said. "The car outside belongs to my father's company. Your position, your salary, your professional standing in this city, all of it runs through us. And as of tonight, none of it does anymore." She walked to the front door and opened it. "Take what you came with, which, if I understand correctly, is nothing." Looked at Fiona one last time. Something passed across his face that might have been regret or might have simply been the shock of consequence finally arriving after a decade of absence. Fiona looked back at him triumphantly. She did not look away. She did not cry. She simply looked at him the way a woman looks at something that once had enormous power over her life and no longer does. He left. Haley closed the door quietly behind him. Then she turned back to the living room where Fiona was sitting with her children, and she crossed the room and sat beside her, and for a long moment they simply sat together in the silence of what had just happened. "It's over," Haley said. Fiona nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "It is." Richard Donovan made the calls himself the next morning. Every door the Donovan name had opened for Caleb in the past 10 years was permanently closed before the day ended. His position terminated. His professional references dismantled. The empire he had built on a young woman's broken back collapsed in less than 24 hours. 2 evenings later, Haley called Fiona. "I want to offer you something," she said. "Please hear me completely before you respond." Senior supervisor position at the Donovan Group. Real salary. Full benefits. Company vehicle. A genuine future with room to grow. Richard Donovan himself had approved it. The man who, when his daughter told him Fiona's full story, had sat quietly for a long moment and then said simply, "Find her and make it right." Additionally, the Donovan Family Foundation was extending full academic scholarships to both Eli and Adele. Fees, books, uniforms, everything, for as many years as they needed. "You spent 10 years building someone else's dream," Haley said softly. "It is time someone helped you build yours." Fiona sat down on her kitchen floor right where she was standing. She pulled her knees to her chest, and she cried, not the silent, held-together crying she had perfected over a decade, but the loud kind. 4 months later, Fiona stood in the glass lobby of the Donovan Group's regional office in a pressed navy blazer. Her staff ID badge clipped to her lapel. Her name printed cleanly across it, Supervisor. She looked at it for a long moment and thought about the girl who had once carried a food tray on her head in worn shoes and whispered to herself that it was temporary. She had been right. It was temporary. It just took longer than it should have, and it ended differently than she had ever imagined. Not with Caleb returning, not with anyone who owed her making it right, but with a stranger who chose to see her fully and a father who said make it right, and 2 children who had watched their mother refuse to stop working hard for 10 years. Illy and Adele's education was fully covered. The new apartment had 3 bedrooms and windows that let the morning light pour in without asking permission. Fiona straightened her badge, lifted her chin, and walked through those doors like someone who had always belonged there, because she always had. And that is where we leave Fiona. Not bitter or broken, but standing in her own light, the light she had been quietly generating alone for 10 years while nobody was watching. Now I want to ask you something before you go. If you were Haley and you discovered the man you loved had an entire hidden family, would you have done what she did? Would you have brought them face to face? Or would you have handled it differently? Tell me in the comments. I want to read every single response, And to everyone watching who has ever been a Fiona, who carried everything in silence and kept moving anyway, this story was for you. Drop "I know a Fiona" in the comments, and let us honor every woman who gave everything and was left with nothing. If this video moved you, please give it a like right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear this story today. Subscribe to this channel if you are not already here and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. I will see you in the next one.